Welcome back to The Biggest Talk. For all you viewers tuning in for the first time, we break down some of the most influential bestsellers and read them so you don't have to. We're your hosts,
Ira.
Sebastian.
and Harrison.
Video 4 of 4, ending it off for John Maxwell's Leadershift. And what are we going to start off with today, guys?
We're going to start off with trained leaders to...
Transformational leaders.
There you go.
What is that? What is a
What is the difference
transformational leader?
between-
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is
What is
that
the
like-
difference
is that
between
like-
trained?
All right. What's a
Is that
train
like-
leader?
Optimus Prime Transformers.
Transformation.
Oh, he was the leader of the team, right?
That's right, Autobots, roll out. No, but I think in all seriousness, I think what he is talking about in terms of like trained leaders to transformational leaders, it's easy to just take direction, I feel. But when you're in a position to where you have to use your own intuition, because, you know, transformational leaders starts to imply like you're multiplying that quality that you've learned, you know, from your like time when you're learning to be a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, like the way that I like to understand it is I kind of think of like the military, like the captain will train like the lieutenant or something, right? And then eventually the lieutenant's gonna become a captain, and then that captain's gotta train his lieutenant.
Yeah.
And I just feel like when you're a transformational leader, you give people the skills that they need to, you know, you add value essentially.
Yeah, I think
then-
a train leader is like level 1 grunt,
Yeah.
and then transformational is like level 100 mafia
I
boss.
feel like the trained leader would be like a manager.
No, I think train leader is like they understand leadership and not being
Yeah.
a manager. They
Yeah.
understand leadership. They understand how to see more and before, like he always talks about. But transformational leader, like they have the creative, you know, insight. Like Napoleon Hill talks about, like creativity, like that shit's
Yeah.
crazy, like that shit's hard if you know
Yeah, you
that.
gotta subscribe to that searching radio frequency. You understand everything.
So the trained leaders are the ones who have that leadership instinct, but they have their set paths in which they follow.
No, I don't think they have the instinct yet. I think they understand leadership and the difference between being a manager and being a leader. They understand that. They're there. But then there's like, then you level up. And you're
Yeah.
like, when you're like, you're an expert at being a leader. Like that's like novice leader versus like expert leader, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like you gotta think like, let's just think, Maxwell is training his team of leaders,
Yeah.
right? I think those are the trained leaders. They understand
Exactly.
what they need to be a leader. Right? They understand the decisions that they make, and they have to understand, you know, what they're looking for. But for them to be a transformational leader, they would have to somehow ascend to Maxwell's level.
And they just need time, practice
Exactly.
being a trainer,
And then I just
being
feel
a
like,
leader.
yeah, it's not something that it just kind of comes to you, but it is something you have to be intentional
Yes.
about. I think that's like the main point and why he brings it up, because there are plenty of leaders that know what the right thing to do is, right? But it's so few and far that people begin to add value to people who are lower than them or to each other and lift each other up rather than keeping someone else down, right? Because it's a lot easier to take than it is to give from someone.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good like lesson, and it's something that people forget, I feel, because like when you start to do well, there's a lot of distractions, you know, and not everyone is super intentional about being a transformational leader.
Yeah.
Everyone's super focused on like, oh, how can I do well? How can I lead my team? Like, what do I need to do to be successful?
Yeah.
Right. And then I think what he's talking about is like, yeah, you're successful. Put that behind you. How are you gonna make the people around you successful? You know, as successful as you are. Just transformational in anything. It doesn't have to be necessarily leadership, but it can be, you know, whether you're teaching someone the business or like how are you molding them to be the best version of themselves without them having to follow like guidelines.
Yeah, and I think that's what in his 5 levels of leadership that we talked about way back.
Yeah.
Like that's like the pinnacle that he talks about. Like that's when you've really understood leadership to its like full potential, I feel.
Right.
Even though there's always room to grow, like we say.
Right. You know, he talks about creativity a lot in the book, and I feel like that's such a like left field kind of idea, because when we think about leadership, we think about, you know, discipline and hard work.
Yeah.
And not like
Lead by example.
Exactly, not like imagination or do what you want to do, right? Like when we think of power or responsibility, we think of consequences.
And we think of order, you know,
Exactly.
like not so like out of the box.
Right. But I think it takes that imagination to be able to become a transformational leader, because you're turning these people into something that they've never been before. Because I feel like when you follow a guideline, like you can make cookie cutter like managers. You can make cookie cutter CEOs. You can make cookie cutter CFOs. You know, but like it's hard to have someone be like their own entity.
I think also it helps them with their, like, if you're a transformational leader and you have that creativity, you could have so much more perspective and insight on solving problems too, difficult problems, you know, because you see things differently. And I think that's a quality a leader needs to have, is to be able to see those perspectives.
Perception is very important.
Not only the perception with like solving problems or anything, but also having that creative part is a good thing to have, because a lot of people have already got that point to point leadership down.
Yeah, I mean, I get it like, in a packet of notes. I mean, I can study the notes.
Do this, do that. This is the formula to be successful here. Right? Because everyone already has success in a lot of stuff, because at the rate where humans are sort of like evolving through the years, everyone's discovering a lot already. So by having that, adding that creative factor, you are the one sort of becoming the pioneer.
You know what? I think I think it's a little bit contradictory in terms of like wanting creativity in the modern day, because I feel like everything is already so creative, and it almost feels like everything has already been created. Yeah. You know? And then I feel like we're just talking about it last episode. It's like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like you know what works. You know, find your success. But all of a sudden we're kind of, you know, faced with this other option of like, oh, you should do something on your own. You should kind of try new things, right? Yeah. I feel like change is really hard for like what people struggle with. And I think it's just really interesting how we're focusing on creativity amongst an age of like free information. Yeah. You know? So like I was talking to, you know, a friend or our friend earlier this week about like how the invention age is over, and how it would have been super cool to like live during like the 1850s or like or like the 1900s, just to live through that invention period and seeing all these new ideas come out with, you know, road development, and then there's more mail development, exactly, and people
birth control.
People just become more tight knit with technology and like the radio, right? And I just feel like all these things, they've been done before, you know, but I feel like he has such a weird niche with this like transformational stuff. Like no one really can crack the code, but you have that creativity.
I think you can, but that's why he's saying it's like the pinnacle, because it's really difficult to do, especially as time progresses. Right. But you know,
I feel
like genetic stuff, like they're still cracking codes every day. You know.
That's true.
Yeah, I feel like that's why he brings this up now after the point of reaching the sort of transformational leadership, because you're already at the top. You know, so why just with the ladder, as we talked about in the last video, why just add the single rung up?
Bro, when I get to the top of that ladder, I'm just kicking everybody off, you know.
Exactly, bro. Why go straight up?
Exactly, bro.
When you could
push them down.
You could find a way to have
the 300 Spartan kick them down my ladder.
So you could add totally different variables. Now that you're at the top, that you've reached your pinnacle, you could change.
It's like
with that creative variable.
It's like when you're playing, you know, Minecraft Survival, and then you turn on creative mode. And all of a sudden, you're like around. Invincible. You create as many ladders as you want. You know, it never ends.
But I think it's kind of interesting how he goes to like leadership, and he goes to the pinnacle of leadership for like the people that are actually hardcore leaders, and then he pulls it all the way back to just normal people. You know, career to calling is the last chapter. Right. What is that about?
I think career is something that you want to do, versus calling is something that you're like made to do. Yep. Makes sense. Because like, you know, we see, you know, in a lot of videos, like for example, Mike Rowe, right? Shout out to Mike Rowe, right? In from the Dirty Jobs, he talks about, you know, just because you're passionate about something, you shouldn't necessarily make it your career, right? And I feel like a lot of people, they feel stuck. They feel at a dead end job because the career that they chose is not something that they like excel at. Because, you know, when we went to the Ben Shapiro conference, right, he's like, if you want to make a lot of money, if you want to be successful in life, you need to find a certain set of facts and be the only provider of those facts. Yeah. Right. So how are you different in the sense of what you're offering, not so much different as a person, right? So I think when he talks about like career to calling, people get stuck in their careers and they spend their lifetime finding their calling, right? So I think it
should really be the other way, right?
Yeah. Right.
It's hard because, you know, a lot of people say, like when we went to go at 10X, Jesse Itzler said, you find your meaning in life between what you're good at what you love to do, and what makes the world a better place.
Right.
And to find that, you really have to try a lot of things to really figure it out, you know, because there's some things you're going to be good at and you're like, oh, I'll just pursue that because I'm good at it. There's things you're going to love to do. You're like, can I pursue that? Can that be a profession? You know, can it work?
Right.
And that's hard usually. And then like, are you adding value to people? And that's the main thing, because the market has to prove you.
Right. And then not only that, but you also are beginning to think like, oh, I have to start my career. I have to spend
you always feel like you just have to
X
do it.
amount of time in it. I need to spend 5 years. Like, okay, so for example, like a sushi chef, I don't know how real this is, but I heard like you have to make like sushi rice for 2 years before you can even start touching the fish in Japan, right? And then I think that's a little bit insane.
Yeah.
But it shows you like that tradition and that
The diligence.
you know, not so much the diligence, but the limitations that you find yourself in when you have a career, because all of a sudden you're not creating, you're replicating, and then you can only replicate what someone else has replicated before you. You're not kind of you're not making any progress when you're doing the same thing over and over and over again.
You know what's interesting about that, Harrison? Going a little bit off topic with sushi chefs.
Yeah.
Sushi chefs.
Is that no matter how successful, like you'll see some with like multi-million dollars sushi restaurants and stuff, and yet when they go back to Japan, a lot of the times, due to traditional Japanese culture, they're not looked very highly upon because they're just chefs. They're the ones who cook the food, you know, so they're considered still the servants, which kind of sucks because of what they do, you know.
Right. I think everyone has a different kind of like set of
values.
Set of societal like baggage that comes with whatever you do. Like,
yeah, of course.
Like low key, people don't really respect like garbage people or people who deal with waste, but they like take care of, you know, a lot of things that we don't take into consideration. Like, for example, they need to know the certain kind of chemicals that they can't mix, right? Or even they're working in close proximity to, you know, a lot of trash and waste, and it's not a like blue collar. It is a blue collar job, but it's not a job that should be frowned upon.
Yeah.
You know, and like I think in terms of career to calling, I don't think there's an issue if you like spend your time in your career and use that to find your calling, because I feel like you know, even Grant Cardone talks about like, oh, if you have cash, just stack your cash. Right, just stack it. I don't care, rent apartment, whatever. Just stack your cash, you know. But never do nothing with your cash. Don't let your cash die.
Sit there, yeah.
Right.
So it's dying.
Exactly. So I think when you're looking at your career versus your calling, if you don't necessarily have your calling in your life yet, there's no shame in that at all.
But you have to be intentional about finding it.
Exactly.
That's the part.
You have to be intentional.
Because if you don't, you're gonna go through life regretting it, being stuck in your career.
A lot of people, whenever it comes to that point where they need to decide what they're gonna do, they just look for money. They don't look for what makes them happy. They just see, oh, let me take a look here.
Well, it is because money
makes them happy.
Makes them happy in the sense that they can provide for their family and they can enjoy their free time. But when you spend most of your time at work, you know, it has to be, if you pursue your calling, I feel like life is just so much more fulfilling.
Yeah. I mean, Confucius always says like, oh, find something that you love to do for work, and you don't work a day in your life, you know. And then I think that's so like profound, because there's, you know, plenty of people who are like, oh, I hate my boss, or I hate my job, or I'm sick of it, or I'm sick of Chipotle, I'm sick of Paris spaghetti, I'm sick of the long hours.
That's the thing, because they get stuck there because they never tried and to find another option. They just say like, God, I hate doing this, but gives me the money I need, so might as well stay there. So
and it sets the path too, right? Because then you see that ladder, it's like, okay, I have direction instead of if I go out and just do whatever and random, who knows where.
So do you think people themselves are destined to find greatness? Because we talk about like the zones early in earlier episodes, like different zones. Like, are you doing as little as you can to like skate by? Are you doing what you're comfortable with, right? Are you sticking to routine, or are you like trying new things? And I feel like people in general, I just feel like some people, they just can't change. You know, some people are definitely stuck in their ways, but I definitely want to ask you guys, like, what do you guys think in terms of, you know, how success happens? Because success is rare, right? If you want to be the top 1%, you can't act like the rest of the 99%, right? But what makes that 1%, you know, the 1% that everybody else is missing?
Yeah, it's hard, because I do believe that there's just people that are set in their ways. Because, you know, John Maxwell talked about this. I heard it in one of his podcasts. he said like one of his biggest struggles is thinking there's more to people and that he can help everybody become the best.
Right.
But there's just people that just don't want it, and you have
and
to
you can't
be
please
content with that.
everybody. Right.
Yeah, and it's hard when you're a leader like him. You just want to prove yourself. You could do like you can make anybody the best.
Especially if it's your profession, man.
Yeah.
If your profession is being a life coach, being a motivational speaker, and then you see someone in front of you who, isn't listening to your coaching or who isn't motivated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to walk away from that and think that you did nothing wrong,
Yeah.
right? But I just feel like you have to. You can't make everybody
Yeah, you have to
happy
be
in this
content.
life,
Yeah.
right? But as long as you're doing your best and you yourself can believe that, like, no one can take anything away from you.
Yeah, going off of everything we're talking about right here, my dad used to tell me this saying that if you can't do what you love what you do, which is what a lot of people consider. So they're like,
what do you mean by love what you do? Like learn
Right.
to love what you do, or
yeah, like if someone can't follow their passion and make that their career, that's when they would like take the job, which they can take, and then do their best at it, put their effort into it. But a lot of people forget that first part, if you can't do what you love, they don't even try to attempt and do what they love.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the latter, just pursuing what you really don't like and like deluding yourself to make yourself believe you like it isn't the best option, of course, but it is a good alternative from just going to work hating what you do. So
definitely.
But I think you have to pursue your passion. That's what's going to make life fulfilling, make you add value to people
Right.
the most, and make the most of your life. And it's just, it's so crazy to think that so many people don't, but we're not old enough to really understand that, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's kinda
I
difficult.
just feel bad for people who feel like they've gone to their calling, and then they work so hard, they work so many years, and they find out like this is not like what it turned out to be, or this is not what I wanted to be, or it's not what I'm happy with. Isn't it?
Then
kinda,
it's not really their calling, is it?
right. I know, and I'm just saying like I feel bad for people who become in that situation, because I think that everyone is not destined for success. Unfortunately, there's always going to be people who just miss it, and in this situation, if you miss it, it's as good as you're missing it by a mile, right? It's either you have it or you don't. So I think despite like those kind of failures, I think there is some sort of unique quality that that buds, because the way I look at it is a little bit kind of like through like a Darwinistic viewpoint, to where
Same.
to where there's like 10 people, right? All 10 of them fail, but one of them like mutates, right? In terms of like a genetic mutation, if a species was going extinct, they have to change,
Yeah.
right? And then I think the course of the book has been like you have to adapt. You have to adapt. I feel like people are always going to find themselves in a situation to where they're not happy with, and it's onto the individual whether or not they do something about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can't expect to go into your 9-to-5 job that you just qualified for, that you're just interning for, and that be your calling, right?
Yeah.
No one's like, man, my calling is to be a bank teller. If it is, cool, okay, no judgment. But I'm just saying, like, people who are like us, who are in college, who are finding temporary jobs, part-time jobs. Like some people, they just get stuck in that zone to like, oh, do you want to be a manager? Then you gotta be here X amount of hours. And people will sacrifice their schooling to be a manager, right? And then they kind of just find themselves stuck.
Yeah.
because
They
they're
take it.
doing-
They just take it.
Exactly,
They just keep taking
take
it. And they don't take their free time to go actually figure out what their life's about,
Mhm.
And then you find yourself 20 years down the line, like, shoot, like,
Where is I?
yeah,
Right.
why is my life being wasted? Like, you just find yourself in that crisis, the
Definitely.
midlife crisis.
So like, what do you guys think like are some things that people can use to try to navigate between their career and their calling? I don't
things they could use.
I don't know, because like
I have some
like
ideas.
like
but-
making what you do for your job like what you love, I think that's great. But I think a lot of people, they use their careers to supplement their callings. Does that make sense?
What do you mean? Why is that?
Like-
You seem like there's a negative connotation to that.
No, there's
I
no
get what you're
negative
saying.
connotation. It's just like I feel like people's callings are so, they can be so like righteous, or they can be so optimistic that it's not something that you can necessarily get paid to do. But then again, you have to figure out for yourself and analyze yourself like, oh, I have a career that enables me to do this, right? And that might be your calling. And then I don't think there's an issue with that. I think it's very hard to tell someone and be like, hey, whatever you're passionate about, find a way to make money at it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's hard to tell someone, hey, whatever you're passionate about, keep doing it. know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying because in my case, how you guys know I'm mechanical engineering
Yeah,
major,
he's our car guy.
which isn't because it's like I love cars,
Right,
and
he's the guy.
that's what I have a passionate about. I have a passionate. That's what I am passionate about, and a mechanical engineering degree is a little over.
Not
what's the
very
word?
exactly what you want.
Yeah, it covers more
It's
than
a little. It covers
you
more
need.
than I would
Yeah.
need to do my passion, which is cars. You know.
Yeah.
But by getting a mechanical engineering degree, you know, which is the basis of how cars work, you know, the mechanical engineering,
Sure.
that allows me to obtain a career in which I would be able to use to fund my
Your-
passion,
your hobby, your
Yeah,
passion.
my
right?
passion.
But the thing is,
if I want to run my
if
own
you're
shop.
using a job to fund your passion, I don't think it's so much that you're going to be able to maximize how much value you can add to the world. I think if you make your passion your life, that's your job, you get paid to do that.
Yeah.
That's when you really truly add the most value to the world.
Hmm.
So it seems like it could work, right? I think a lot of people do it that way.
Mhm.
They have their occupation and they have their recreational time that they do what they love.
Right.
But I feel like that's more of a selfish
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's only really kind of it affects yourself, not all the time, but I think for the most part.
It really just depends on the person. Like for me, the reason I picked mechanical engineering is because it runs along the lines whereas I could branch into the automotive industry if I wanted to.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is with that passion, it's like a very cut and set path.
Yeah.
Whereas when I have the mechanical engineering degree, it gives me a broader spectrum of what I could
Sure,
do.
but the thing is, like, you know what you want to do, so why don't you just pursue that path? Why do you need the broad path? That's kind of my thing.
Yeah, like why aren't you laser focused?
Yeah.
Is that what we're going on?
There's a lot of which goes into that.
A lot of
which-
nuances.
Yeah, but I mean,
We'll
it's
probably-
it's a lot to talk and it's a lot to think about. But you know, as we're talking about career and calling, if you guys feel like you guys are stuck between your career and your calling, you know, you can leave a comment section below. You know, we read all our comments. We are very much responsive. If you guys like the video,
Give
please
some
leave a
insight.
like.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to keep seeing us, you know, subscribe. It really gives us motivation to continue to do this. And we all hope that you have a great rest of your day.
And on that, time to rate the book.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'll start.
How many loaves you give it out of 5?
How many what?
How many loaves? Loaves.
Loaves of bread. Gotta
Loaves
get that
of bread. We gotta get this bread, boy.
I'll give it 3 loaves and 8 slices.
8 slices.
Buttered. All right.
There you go.
I think I was gonna give it a 4, but it was good. But just because we read the last one, it's so similar. There was a few unique things though, so I can appreciate that. And he's just a great writer. I love his writing style. It really is simple for me to read and like comprehend most of it compared to other books. So yeah, there's my 3.8.
Huh. I think I'm gonna give a little bit less and go for just 3 loaves.
Tres leches.
Yeah, 3 leches. Because I just feel like, you know, like you said, there's a lot of content that's, you know, repeated. I do have appreciation for this new creative factor that he's
Yeah.
introduced over time. I feel like it definitely is a modern take on what it takes to be a leader. But like you said, I enjoyed all of his examples. He is a good writer. He's very concise. I do appreciate
Yeah.
that. It doesn't feel like I'm wasting my time reading
Yeah.
the novel. But a lot of the information was a little bit regurgitated, and I did have a little bit of a hard time getting through the book.
Yeah,
but that's just me.
this is probably our
personally.
last Maxwell book.
Yeah.
I've read 3 now, so it's like I've heard this shit 3 times.
You gotta
Yeah.
read all of it.
He has like 50 books, bro.
Yeah.
It's probably all say the same thing, with like one thing different. It's not
For-
worth.
How many loaves you got, Ira? How many loaves you gonna whip out?
For me, I'm gonna go with a solid 3.5 loaves.
Okay.
5 loaves?
Because 3, because like
Three
you
and a
guys
half.
said, a lot of the information is the same, but then the extra half of a loaf, because there are some things which are different, which the creative factor was a very little bit of a 180 a part of it.
And we're kind of biased too, because we need to judge it independently as a book, you know, compared to reading
Yeah.
too.
Right.
So that's why I kind of gave it a little higher, 3.8, because he's
Yeah.
a good writer.
And also the what's it called, the personal inputs in like his situations in which he and the shifts that he made in those situations, I feel are very good to have in the book, because his situation may be similar to a reader's situation, which would
Yeah.
help
Yeah,
them to
his
Right.
example's
shift.
always great too.
Okay.
Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
If you guys read the book, leave your opinion of how many lobes you give it out of in the comment section below.
Yeah, and like you said, you know, if any of you are struggling to find your calling or whatever, if you're in a weird spot, I mean, at this age, everyone's in a weird spot trying to figure out what they want to do. You might be convinced you want to do something, you might figure out you don't, but leave a comment. You know, it's always best to discuss these ideas, and then maybe the answer comes out of nowhere, right? So for now, we'll catch you guys next time. Let's go out and get this bread.